Hello, my name is Savim McCutcheon. I'm a catalog librarian at Kent State University in Ohio, where I specialize in cataloging monographs and maps. I will be talking to you about cataloging ETDs using the newest set of cataloging instructions called Resource Description and Access, or RDA. My goals for today's talk are these. For people who do not yet know much about RDA or ETD cataloging, I wish to provide the most necessary information a person needs in order to start cataloging ETDs and RDA. In addition to the content of the presentation, links to educational materials are provided. Second, I wish to share with catalogers and systems people information about standards and methods that have already been developed. This is so that people exploring how to do these things can use and adapt existing materials and processes, rather than having to create their own from nothing. These include two semi-automated methods of generating the descriptive portion of a bibliographic record, one of which uses metadata harvesting. If cataloging ETDs is not an area you are directly involved in, I hope you will share information with your colleagues who are. I am happy to be contacted by anyone who would like more information. First, let's go over some terms. Kent State University is a member of the OhioLink Consortium, which manages the OhioLink ETD Center, a repository for ETDs and honors papers from Ohio academic institutions. OCLC WorldCat is the international database of records used by libraries worldwide to store and share bibliographic records. There are two sets of instructions currently used in OCLC WorldCat. AACR2, also known as Anglo-American Cataloging Rules, 2nd edition, is the older standard. It is fast being succeeded by RDA, Resource Description and Access. An advantage of RDA is that it's less book-centric, thus better able to accommodate current formats and those that will be developed in the future. AACR2 and RDA are content standards. They give instructions about what information to include in a descriptive record. In other words, these are rulebooks. AACR2 and RDA are in a different category than MARC. MARC is a metadata transmission standard, or an encoding standard. MARC specifies where and how to input information using numbered fields, subfields, and indicators in bibliographic records so that computers can correctly manipulate and display data in ways that people can use. Elements that are valid for use in a MARC record are explained in OCLC's document on the web, Bibliographic Formats and Standards. RDA, the new content standard, is transmission standard agnostic. In other words, even though we currently use MARC when applying RDA in library catalogs, we could use something else. It is anticipated that MARC will be replaced by BibFrame in upcoming years. The goal of transitioning from MARC, which is a flat file model, to BibFrame, which is a relational model, is to bring library data into the semantic web. BibFrame makes use of RDF, Resource Description Framework, and URIs, Uniform Resource Identifiers, to get library data into the semantic web. When I started at Kent State University in 2006, universities all over were in the process of transitioning from having their graduate students submit theses and dissertations in print to having them do so electronically. We catalog librarians knew how to handle print theses and dissertations. Both AACR2 and supplemental best practices had been available for a long time. But ebooks in general and ETDs, which are a special kind of ebook, were new at that time. The existing resources and guidelines available at the national and international levels were not sufficient to address these new formats, so OhioLink formed a working group to develop consortial standards for cataloging ETDs. We incorporated broad cataloging principles for best access, extrapolated from current rules and practices, and consulted with OCLC experts. The result was a document containing standards for cataloging ETDs using AACR2 and MARC. While our goal was primarily to serve the needs of Ohio institutions, we did so with an eye to creating standards that would be widely applicable and compatible with national and international standards. Some years later, the next big change was the transition from one set of cataloging instructions to another, from AACR2 to RDA. Though the transition has been gradual, a milestone came in January 2013 when the Library of Congress switched to doing its cataloging in RDA. Many American libraries made the change at that time also, as the Library of Congress creates many of the bibliographic records used in other libraries. In 2013, OhioLink reconstituted the ETD working group in order to address the change in cataloging instructions. The ETDs in RDA working group provided standards in August 2013, then provided a revision in October 2014. OhioLink working groups have been active in creating guidelines and standards for cataloging a variety of electronic resources, not just ETDs. These are all available through the OhioLink website and the NDLTD website, the Networked Digital Library of Theses and Dissertations. Our hope is that the standards drawn up by OhioLink working groups will benefit people outside our consortium. They are publicly available for other institutions to adopt or adapt. Here's an example of a website for an individual ETD within the OhioLink ETD Center. This is the metadata about the ETD. It is generated from the information the student author fills out on a submission form when submitting his or her ETD. It's worth noting that although the web page contains useful information, it's not the preferred source of information for cataloging. The attached PDF of the full text is the cataloger's authoritative source of information to use when creating a bibliographic record. And here's the rest of what is seen on the ETD site. In AACR2, the bibliographic world was divided into formats. You looked at one chapter if you were cataloging books, and a different chapter if you were cataloging video recordings. But it was difficult to determine how to catalog something that crossed formats, like electronic streaming video, or a serial where all the issues are on DVDs instead of paper. Then you had to struggle to find and apply the pertinent rules for multiple chapters. RDA takes a very different approach based on Ferber principles, which divide the bibliographic world into entities. Format does not matter very much. The Ferber entities go from abstract ideas, as in works, to manifestations, the particular physical versions you have, to items, the particular copies you have. The main thing to remember is that right now in our MARC environment, we usually catalog manifestations, which are roughly equivalent to different formats or versions of the same work. Two main principles of RDA are to input what you see and to accept what is provided. Thus, we see fewer abbreviations and fuller information in some fields. Compared to AACR2, RDA offers catalogers more options. Often, there is more than one right way to provide information of a certain kind. Where there is more than one correct choice, the Library of Congress and the Program for Cooperative Cataloging have written down their policy statements in the RDA toolkit. Here is the point in the presentation when I shift from providing general information to providing specific information of interest to people who catalog ETDs. MARC had to change to encompass RDA. There are new fields, and some old fields are used in new ways. In some cases, information that was combined together in one subfield is now broken out into multiple subfields. This increased granularity is in preparation for a linked data world, with the expectation that future systems will be better able to exploit the data because it's separated by type of data. Looking at a record in OCLC WorldCat, you can tell that a record was created using RDA because in the 040 field there is a subfield E that says RDA. In conjunction with that, in the fixed field area indicating the descriptive cataloging form, the code is I instead of A for AACR2. One of the big changes between AACR2 and RDA is how we convey information about format. GMD stands for General Material Designation. The words in GMDs describe formats in brackets in the middle of the title field. Examples are video recording, sound recording, and electronic resource. In AACR2, they exist in any bibliographic record for non-print or audiovisual resources, but not print resources. In RDA, there is no GMD. It's replaced by three fields, the 336 for content type, 337 for media type, and 338 for carrier type. These are included for all formats, both non-print and print. Here's what a GMD looks like in AACR2 and what the content, media, and carrier fields look like in an ETD record made using RDA. It may look complex, but it's not necessary to memorize these terms and codes. The OCLC connection interface has macros and drop-down menus to supply the proper values. One of the decisions library communities need to make is how much and what portions of the 336 through 338 fields to show to the public to convey format. Here is one possible method to show library users only the 338 subfield A. That is, for ETDs and ebooks, the phrase online resource. Ideally, vendors would use the information in the 33X fields to generate user-friendly icons or natural language terms that would be easy for the public to understand. Until our vendor provides us with a user-friendly method, at KSU we've decided not to display any of the 336 through 338 fields in public mode. This is an example of a new field for familiar information, and the new field has more granularity. Instead of a 260 field, which combined in one field all information about publisher, distributor, printer, etc., we now use multiple 364 fields. The second indicator tells what function the corporate body performed. There is also an indicator specifically for copyright date. Here are two examples of common publishing situations among ETDs and other resources I have cataloged. The first is where a publication date is provided. The second situation is where no explicit date of publication is provided, but a copyright date is provided. The physical description field contains spelled out words in RDA instead of abbreviations. Information about the resource being a PDF now goes in a different field, the 347. The 347 is a new marked field for digital file characteristics. Some pieces of information in this field used to be in notes. When the new method of inputting the dissertation note is used, the contents that are divided into subfields. Any information about the student's degree that is not accommodated in the 502 field but is considered important can go in an additional note. Here are a few changes in mark usage in recent years which, though not specifically prompted by RDA, do affect cataloging of ETDs in both RDA and AACR2. OhioLink's preference is for consortium members to include a note plus an access point for the subunit within the university that the graduate student is affiliated with. We understand from public services librarians that this information aids local constituents in situations such as when a graduate student wishes to see ETDs other students in his or her department have written to better understand what is expected and accepted. The note is keyword searchable, while the access point provides a consistent name of the department that's both keyword searchable and searchable as a corporate body author. Here is how the note and corresponding access point appear in a bibliographic record. RDA emphasizes relationships, and catalogers are encouraged to specify the roles of creators and contributors to works. Thus, relationship designators are provided for authors, illustrators, etc. The three most common relationship designators used in ETD bibliographic records are author, degree supervisor, and degree granting institution. Here are examples of how the relationship designators are used in ETD bibliographic records. It's possible to input minimal level records into OCLC WorldCat and your local catalog. A minimal level record is generally one that provides just a description and any author-supplied keywords, but no controlled vocabulary such as subject headings or classification number. In OCLC, the encoding level chosen shows whether a record is minimal level or full level. At Kent State University, we do full level cataloging for ETDs as well as other resources our libraries acquire. We are in a fortunate situation in which we have the skills and at least graduate student staffing to assign Library of Congress subject headings and classification numbers, medical subject headings as well when appropriate, and to create name authority records in order to provide identity management for authors. Much of the cataloging of ETDs at KSU is done by graduate students who are in KSU's School of Library and Information Science under my supervision. I find that original cataloging of ETDs is an excellent way to teach them complex and marketable skills in preparation for their future careers. Key OCLC personnel are aware that sections of bibliographic formats and standards that address cataloging of theses and dissertations are out of date, and there are plans to update them. BFAS was originally written at a time when theses and dissertations were only in print, and thus they were treated as unpublished manuscripts. In contrast, ETDs are considered published. The need for revision was brought to the attention of OCLC. OCLC personnel confirmed and gave support for the following, which we incorporated into the Ohio Link Consortium's ETD cataloging standards in RDA. First, ETDs from United States state universities should be considered state government publications, unlike print theses and dissertations. Second, access points for advisors and institutions should be included in ETD master records in fields 700 and 710, now that RDA specifically provides relationship designators for these entities. Now I will explain two semi-automated ways to create bibliographic records for ETDs. One way is to create ETD bibliographic records within OCLC with minimal effort is to set up a constant data record, and I expect that similar labor-saving techniques would be available in other databases. The constant data record automatically inputs the elements that are standard across all ETDs and contains placeholders to remind the cataloger to input the data that varies. This saves a lot of time and increases accuracy over typing or copying and pasting each element. What you see in this slide is the top part of the ETD constant data record that KSU uses. If you have any questions about creating a constant data record, feel free to contact me for assistance. In addition to the constant data record, at KSU we've also written up a set of instructions for graduate students and librarians who catalog ETDs. It guides them through each marked field in order, explaining what to look for, edit, or add. I am happy to share this document. Here is what the ETD looks like when the constant data record is filled out and the bib record is finished. Here's the middle of the completed bibliographic record, and the end of the bibliographic record with access points. This is the corresponding name authority record for the author of that particular ETD. And here is what the public sees when an ETD is fully cataloged. And the public view continued here. I will now describe the second of the two semi-automated ways I'm familiar with to create bibliographic records for ETDs. While using constant data is time and labor saving, using machine-generated records can be even more efficient. There are certainly multiple ways of harvesting metadata to populate bibliographic records. OhioLink has one, a metadata harvesting program called the ETD-CAT tool. The ETD-CAT tool harvests metadata from the student author's ETD website and places the metadata in the proper places in a MARC record. We call the resulting records provisional records because they are meant to be temporary, reasonably good descriptions for users to access until a catalog librarian has time to do full cataloging. However, some libraries, due to staffing or other issues, accept the provisional record as their final record. The records that ETD-CAT generates right now have room for improvement. Those who are familiar with cataloging using MARC will notice some errors in terms of the missing subfield B in the 245, inputting methods, and invalid characters in the 520 abstract note. Several of these errors have to do with ending punctuation, which may not seem very important until you realize that periods after certain fields, like in the 33X and 347, generate error messages. Catalogers are unable to add the record to the OCLC WorldCat database until punctuation is fixed, either automatically or manually. In consultation with another member of the task group who created OhioLink standards for cataloging ETDs and RDA, I have drawn up a list of desired changes for future ETD-CAT records and communicated these requests to the OhioLink programmers. This is how future records generated by the ETD-CAT tool should look. I look forward to two developments, one consortial, one international. The first is modifications to the OhioLink ETD-CAT tool so that provisional ETD records generated have no validation errors or omissions. The second is revisions and updates to OCLC's bibliographic formats and standards, so the instructions regarding theses and dissertations address the electronic format aspect and also reflect changes in MARC usage which were inspired by RDA. If anyone would like a gentle introduction to RDA in general, consider watching the YouTube video, RDA Basics for Copy Catalogers. I'd like to emphasize that I'm happy to provide additional information, such as the documentation that KSU has, and to offer assistance and consultation about cataloging ETDs. I am also happy to provide this PowerPoint presentation with speaker's notes upon request. Thank you very much.